"Don't touch me," she screamed. Then the single dad's secret left her in tears. "Don't touch me," she screamed. The whole pediatric ward went silent. 30 feet of corridor. 6 nurses. A charge nurse behind the station counter who had been mid-sentence when the sound hit. 2 orderlies near the elevator who turned in unison. And Ryan Calloway, standing completely still with his hands raised, looking at the woman who had just knocked his coffee out of his hand and was now backed against the wall like he was something she needed to get away from. Riverside Children's Hospital was not a quiet place under normal circumstances. The 3rd floor smelled like antiseptic and fruit punch. And the hallway was lined with murals of cartoon animals that someone had commissioned in the early 2000s and nobody had gotten around to replacing. It was a Tuesday afternoon in March, and it had been a hard one. 3 admissions before noon. A fever that turned out to be serious. A family in room 311 who had been there 11 days and were starting to fray at the edges the way families did. Ryan had been walking back from the vending machine with a coffee he wasn't going to drink anyway, when the woman, rolling a suitcase, moving fast, head down, had walked directly into him. The coffee had gone one way. The suitcase had gone the other. And she had reacted to the contact with every muscle in her body spinning away, pressing herself against the mural of a giraffe, chest heaving. "Don't." She stopped, looked at him, really looked, took in the badge, the jeans, the coffee spreading across the floor between them. She wasn't a patient. She was too dressed for that. Blazer, blouse, earrings that caught the light. She was someone who had come from somewhere and was trying to get somewhere else and had, in the space of a corridor collision, come completely apart. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. Her voice was entirely different. I'm sorry." Ryan picked up the coffee cup from the floor. It was empty now. He set it on the ledge beside him. "It was already cold," he said. "Don't worry about it." She was shaking, barely, but he saw it. He'd spent 6 years learning to see it. What she didn't know, standing there against the giraffe mural, was that the man she'd just screamed at wasn't hospital maintenance, or a visitor, or someone who was going to file a complaint. What none of the nurses watching from the station knew was why he'd been on this floor every Tuesday for 4 months. And why, when he recognized what he was looking at, he didn't leave. What everyone would understand by the end of that afternoon would change more than one life. But first, she had to stop shaking. 3 hours earlier, Ryan Calloway had been burning his daughter's breakfast. The apartment was small in the way that stops bothering you after a while. 3rd floor of a building near the hospital. He'd chosen it for the proximity 2 years ago, and had never gotten around to reconsidering. There were drawings on the refrigerator, and a pile of library books on the counter, and a collection of small painted rocks on the windowsill that his daughter Piper had been assembling for almost a year. 1 per week, each one with a face she'd named. Piper was 7. She had her mother's laugh and Ryan's tendency to go quiet when something was wrong, in a way of watching people that was, for her age, unsettling in the best possible sense. She was watching him burn the eggs now. "You keep doing that," she said. "I'm not burning them. I'm caramelizing." "They're black. That's caramelized." She looked at him with the expression of someone who had decided to be patient. He scraped the eggs onto a plate and put toast beside them. He sat across from her and ate his own eggs, also slightly burned. And they had the kind of breakfast conversation that was mostly silence held comfortably, the way it gets between 2 people who have figured each other out. On Tuesdays, he dropped Piper at school and went to the hospital. He'd been doing it for 4 months. He parked in the same spot in the hospital garage, took the stairs to the 3rd floor, and spent 3 hours doing what he did. He hadn't told many people about it. His sister knew. His neighbor, Mrs. Adeyemi, knew because she watched Piper on the days he stayed late. His daughter didn't know the details. She knew he helped people at the hospital on Tuesdays. And she'd asked once if it was like being a doctor, and he'd said no. It's more like being a good listener. She'd thought about that. "I'm a good listener," she said. "You are," he agreed. "You're better than me, actually." She'd accepted this as fact, which was the right response because it was true. This Tuesday he finished breakfast, checked the time, and reminded Piper about her spelling test. She rolled her eyes in a way that meant she'd already studied. He kissed her on top of the head, left the dishes in the sink, he'd do them at night, and left for the hospital. He didn't know, locking the apartment behind him, that this particular Tuesday was going to be different from the others. Her name was Claire Ashford. He found that out 40 minutes after the corridor, when she was sitting in the small family waiting area near the elevator with a cup of tea someone had brought her, and the particular stillness of someone who has been embarrassed and is waiting for the embarrassment to metabolize into something survivable. Ryan had come back. He hadn't planned to. He'd gotten another coffee from the machine, thrown it away because he still didn't want it, and then stood at the end of the hall for a moment and turned around. He pulled a chair over, not too close. Left space. He'd learned the geometry of that. "I'm Ryan," he said. Not Dr. Calloway. Not his title. Just the name. She looked at him sideways. She'd recomposed herself, hair back in place, hands wrapped around the tea, but her eyes were the kind of tired that sleep doesn't fix. "You came back," she said. "I wanted to make sure you were okay. I screamed at you in a hospital hallway. People have worse days." She didn't say anything. Outside the window, a cloud moved, and the afternoon light changed direction. "My son is on this floor," she said finally. "Room 318. He's been here for 9 days." "I know room 318, Ryan said. She looked at him. "Do you work here?" "In a way." He kept his voice even. "What's his name?" "Noah." She said it the way parents say a name when it's also an entire world. "He's 5. Ryan nodded. "He's going to be fine," she said. And it was clear she'd been saying it so often it had stopped sounding like information and started sounding like a prayer. "The doctors say the treatment is working. He's responding well. It's just 9 days is a long time to be in a room that isn't home." "It is," Ryan said. She looked at her tea. "I came in from Seattle. I've been here since Wednesday. My company, I run a small consulting firm. We have a major client presentation Thursday, and I keep trying to manage both things, and today I just..." She stopped. "Today you walked into someone in a hallway," Ryan said. "Today I completely fell apart in a hospital hallway," she corrected. "In front of what looked like half the nursing staff. They've seen worse. They're not judging." She looked at him for the first time, straight on. "You're very calm. Occupational hazard." "What is your occupation?" He was quiet for a beat. Not hiding, just finding the right door. "I come on Tuesdays," he said. "Families with kids who are here long-term. Sometimes they just need someone to sit with them for a while who isn't a doctor delivering information. Someone who can stay without it costing anything." She was still watching him. "That's your job?" "It's what I do on Tuesdays." What Claire didn't know yet was why Tuesdays specifically. Why this floor, these rooms, these families. The answer was in a room down the hall and 3 years in the past. And when she eventually learned it, not today but soon, it would undo her completely. But not the bad kind of undone. The kind that puts something back. She let him walk her back to room 318 40 minutes later. Noah was asleep. He was small in the hospital bed, in the way that children in hospital beds always are, slightly too still, surrounded by equipment that beeped with a rhythm that eventually stopped sounding alarming and just sounded like the room breathing. He had a stuffed elephant tucked against his arm that was missing one eye and had clearly been repaired at some point with a button that didn't quite match. Claire stood in the doorway for a moment before she went in. Ryan waited in the hall. She came back out after a few minutes. "He's sleeping well," she said. Her voice was steadier. "They said that's good. The body does its best work when it's sleeping." She said it like someone reciting something they'd been told. "It's true," Ryan said. She leaned against the wall beside the door. "Do you have kids?" "A daughter, Piper. She's 7. Something shifted in Claire's expression. A small opening. "She knows you do this on Tuesdays?" "She knows I help people. She doesn't know the details yet." He paused. "Someday." The hallway was quieter now. The afternoon shift change had happened, the daytime noise settling into the different register of evening. A nurse passed with a medication cart. Nodded at Ryan the way you nod at someone you've seen enough times to trust, but not enough times to know fully. Claire watched the exchange, filed it. "How long have you been coming here?" she asked. 4 months on this floor." He looked at the mural across the hall, a painted lion with cartoonishly kind eyes. Different floors before that. "Why did you switch floors?" He considered that. "I went where I was needed." She looked at him steadily. "You're being very careful about what you tell me." "I'm being honest. I'm just not leading with certain things." "Why?" He thought about how to say it. Because once people know certain things about you, it changes what they see. And sometimes, especially on a day like today, for someone having a day like yours, it helps more to just be someone sitting in a chair. No credentials, no history attached. She was quiet for a long moment. "That's either very wise or very strange," she said. "Probably both." That got a small, real smile. The first one. It changed her whole face. The trouble started the next morning. Ryan had come back Wednesday, not part of his usual schedule. But Noah's nurse, a kind-eyed woman named Sandra, who'd been on the floor for 12 years, had quietly mentioned that the boy's mom had barely eaten and hadn't slept in her own bed since Sunday. He brought a coffee from the good place 2 blocks away. Not the hospital machine. He'd learned that mattered. He also ran directly into the problem, which had arrived in the form of 2 people stepping off the elevator at 8:47 a.m. A man in a suit carrying a leather portfolio, and a woman in a structured coat with the expression of someone conducting an inspection. The man was Garrett Ashford, Claire's ex-husband. The woman was his fiancée, Pamela Holt, Garrett's company's head of communications, which Ryan would learn later, and which explained quite a lot about her. Garrett was tall, put together in a way that suggested considerable effort, and had the quality some men have of filling space they haven't been invited into. He spotted Ryan in the family waiting area immediately. "Who are you?" he said. Not rudely, just with the complete absence of any social filter that suggested he'd stopped bothering with those some years ago. "Ryan Calloway. Are you hospital staff?" "I'm a volunteer." Garrett looked at Pamela. Something passed between them. Not words, just a shared assessment. "My son is in room 318, Garrett said, in a tone that added the word therefore without needing to. "I know," Ryan said. Garrett looked at the coffee on the table. "Is that Claire's?" "I brought it for her, yes." Another exchanged look with Pamela. "That's very—" Garrett paused, searching for the word. "Attentive." For a volunteer. She hadn't eaten. She's been here 9 days straight. I'm aware of how long my son has been here. The edge was brief but real. I've been managing a board situation, or I would have been here sooner. Ryan said nothing. Pamela Holt spoke up. Her voice was professionally warm, the kind of warm that runs at a constant temperature regardless of what it's expressing. We're just a little surprised, is all. Claire mentioned she'd met someone at the hospital, and we wanted to make sure. Noah's situation attracts a lot of... She paused delicately. Attention. People with various intentions. Pamela, Garrett said mildly. I'm just saying what we talked about in the car. She smiled at Ryan. I'm sure you understand. Ryan looked at her for a moment. I understand completely, he said. He stood up, picked up his coffee, and went to sit in the chair nearest room 318 instead. Claire arrived 12 minutes later, saw the configuration immediately, and the morning rearranged itself. There was a conversation in the hallway that Ryan wasn't part of. Pitched low, clipped, the specific rhythm of two people who had once known each other very well, and now communicated mostly through implication. He could see through the window that Claire's hands were at her sides. Not crossed, not gestured, just held still. The way people hold still when they're working very hard, not to show how much energy that's costing them. Pamela Holt stood to one side with her portfolio and said nothing, which was its own kind of participation. Garrett came back into the waiting area first. He sat across from Ryan with the energy of a man who had made a decision. I'm going to be straightforward, he said. Okay. My son's mother is under considerable stress. She's not sleeping. She's managing a company remotely while being present here, which isn't really manageable. And now she seems to have formed an attachment to a hospital volunteer she met yesterday, which... He stopped, chose words. I'm not interested in whatever dynamic you've established with her. I need her steady while Noah's treatment continues. That's all. Ryan met his eyes. I agree with that. Garrett blinked. He'd expected pushback. She should sleep, Ryan said. She should eat. She's running on adrenaline and guilt, and she's been doing it for 9 days. Everything you're concerned about, I'm concerned about it too. He paused. I'm not a complication. I'm someone who sat with her for an hour yesterday. Garrett studied him. Why? Because that's what I do here. As a volunteer. Yes. Why would someone... Garrett started, then stopped. A different question arrived on his face, more careful, less certain. You're very familiar with this floor. I've been coming here for 4 months. Why? Ryan looked at the lion mural on the wall across from them, at its painted kind eyes. My daughter was a patient here, he said. Room 309. For 8 months, 3 years ago. The hallway sound filled the space between them. Garrett's expression changed. The portfolio shifted in his hands. She's okay, Ryan said. Piper's fine. She's been fine for 2 years. But I know what it looks like. Someone sitting in a waiting area chair that's making permanent indentations, trying to decide if the coffee from the machine is worth it. I know what 9 days feels like from that chair. He paused. So, I come back. Because someone did it for me once. And it helped. Garrett was quiet for a long moment. Pamela Holt had reappeared at the edge of the waiting area. She'd heard most of it. Her portfolio was slightly lower than before. I didn't know that, Garrett said finally. You weren't supposed to. I didn't tell Claire either. Garrett looked toward room 318, at the door, at his son on the other side of it. She's going to find out, he said. I know. How do you want to? Honestly, Ryan said. Same as everything else. He didn't see Claire again until that afternoon. She found him in the family lounge at the end of the hall, the one with the window that looked out over the parking structure, and a small garden that someone maintained below. He was reading. He kept a book in his jacket pocket the way his father had, a habit that had survived everything else. She sat across from him. She looked like she'd been thinking hard since morning. "Garrett told me," she said. Ryan closed the book. "About Piper. About the 8 months." He nodded. She looked at her hands, then out the window, then at him. "Room 309, she said quietly. "That's down the hall. 2 doors. "How old was she?" 4 when it started, almost 5 when she came home. Claire pressed her lips together. He could see her doing the math. Noah was 5 now. She was in the middle of what he'd been through the end of. "What was it?" she asked. He told her. Not the medical terminology first, the real version, the one that started with a morning in October when Piper had woken up not feeling right in a way that was different from normal not feeling right, and ended with 8 months that had rearranged everything he understood about time and fear and what mattered. He told her about the chair, about the coffee machine, about the volunteers who'd come, a man named Ted who brought crosswords and never asked how things were going, just sat it and did crosswords nearby. A woman named Gloria who brought actual food on Thursdays. About how their presence had been, in a way he hadn't fully understood until later. The difference between surviving that period and not. He told her about the day Piper came home, about standing in the parking lot holding her, blinking in the afternoon light like someone who'd been underground for months. Which, in some ways, he had been. "She named a rock for the hospital," he said. "That's the collection on the windowsill. 1 rock per week since she came home. She says it's to keep track of the good days." He paused. "She's up to, I think, 86 now." Claire was very still. Her eyes had filled without her permission, the way it happens when you've been holding something together and something reaches in too precisely. "I'm sorry," she said. And she meant it for several things at once. "She's perfect," he said. "She burns my breakfast every Friday, and she's better at listening than me, and she's 7, and she's perfect." He said it the way people say true things. "Noah is going to be okay. I know I can't promise that. I'm not his doctor. But I know this floor. I know these nurses. I know what it looks like when it's going in the right direction." And it is. A tear ran down Claire's face. She didn't wipe it right away. Just let it happen. "You came back yesterday," she said, "after I screamed at you." "You didn't scream at me. You had a reaction to a physical startle in a stressful environment. That's completely different. I yelled, 'Don't touch me,' in a hospital corridor. In a hospital corridor where half the people present have had far more dramatic moments than that. I promise you." She laughed then, sudden, slightly ragged, the kind that shares a border with crying. "Why didn't you just tell me?" she asked, softer now. He thought about what he'd said to her the day before, about credentials and history and the weight of being known a certain way before someone has met you as just a person. "Because you needed someone in a chair," he said, "not a story." She looked at him for a long time. Outside, a cloud moved. The afternoon light changed the room. "Ryan Calloway," she said, like she was actually meeting him for the first time. "Claire Ashford," he said back. The consequences for Garrett and Pamela were not dramatic. They rarely are, when the damage is the ordinary kind. The slow erosion of trust that happens when someone spends years treating other people as variables in their own management strategy. Garrett had made his comment in the elevator that morning, "People with various intentions," and Pamela had embroidered it. And 3 nurses and an orderly had overheard it directed at a man they'd been watching quietly show up for 4 months to sit with families who were falling apart. Sandra, the nurse with 12 years on the floor, was not the kind of person who made scenes. But she was the kind of person who remembered things, and who had a word with the volunteer coordinator the following week, and who made sure that when the hospital was putting together their annual recognition for family support volunteers, Ryan Calloway's name was at the top of the list. The recognition happened at a small ceremony a month later in the hospital lobby. The chief of pediatrics spoke. There were maybe 30 people. Ryan had told almost no one, his sister found out, because she asked him directly what was happening that Saturday, and he'd been incapable of lying to her since 1997. Piper was there. She wore a dress with pockets and spent most of the ceremony with her hands in them, watching with the particular attention she gave to things that mattered. Garrett Ashford, to his credit, was also there. He'd asked Claire if he could come, and she'd said yes. He stood at the back and he was quiet the entire time, which was its own kind of growth. Pamela Holt was not there. She had, in the weeks following the hospital, found that some of the things she'd said had a way of following her in professional settings. Not catastrophically, but in the specific way that reputations shift when people who've seen you at your smallest start comparing notes. She was managing it. She would manage it. But she would be more careful. Some lessons arrived through doors, some arrived through walls. Noah came home on a Thursday in April. Claire texted Ryan from the parking lot. "We're leaving." He asked to bring the button-eye elephant, and we said, obviously, yes. Ryan was at work. He was a structural engineer, which people were always slightly surprised by, as though the Tuesdays and the crosswords and the coffee suggested something else entirely. He read the text at his desk and sat with it for a moment. He typed back, "Tell him he did great." Her response, "He wants to know if you have a daughter who has rocks." "I do. He wants to know if she'll show him sometime." Ryan looked at his phone, looked out the window at the afternoon, which was the particular April kind, not warm yet, but promising. He typed, "I'll ask her. She'll say yes." "How do you know?" "Because she's been waiting to show someone that collection for a while." A pause. "Ryan, yeah, thank you." And then, a few seconds later, "For Tuesdays." He held the phone for a moment. He put it face down on his desk and went back to work. But he was not really thinking about work. He was thinking about a parking lot in October 3 years ago. And a man named Ted, who did crosswords without asking. And a woman named Gloria, who brought food on Thursdays. About the simple, radical act of showing up and staying. About Piper counting rocks on the windowsill, 86 and climbing. About how the most important thing he'd ever learned fit in one sentence, and it wasn't complicated, and it didn't require any credentials. Someone did it for me. So I come back. 3 weeks later, on a Saturday morning that had no particular agenda, Ryan was burning eggs. "You keep doing that," Piper said. "I'm aware. You could just turn it down. Where's the challenge in that?" She watched him with the expression she'd inherited, patient, precise, slightly amused. There was a knock at the door. 2 knocks, actually, one at adult height, one lower, which meant the second one was a child. Piper's head came up. "Is that—" "Go see," Ryan said. She went. He heard the door, heard her voice, heard the particular quality of 2 kids encountering each other for the first time, cautious, then interested, then rapidly accelerating past both into the logistics of a shared inquiry. Claire was in the doorway when he looked up. She was holding a coffee from the good place 2 blocks from the hospital. She held it out. "I heard you have an egg situation," she said. "It's under control." "It smells like it's not." I prefer to think of it as a developing situation. She came in, set the coffee on the counter, looked at the windowsill, at the painted rocks, all 89 of them now, each with a face and a name Piper had given it. She looked at them for a long time. "Which one is from the first week?" she asked. He pointed to the left end of the line, a small gray stone with a lopsided smile, a button eye painted on in red, slightly smeared from the brush. She looked at it. "He picked a rock yesterday," she said quietly. "Noah, in the backyard. He asked if he could paint it." She paused. I told him yes. Ryan looked at her. From the other room, 2 kids were in vigorous negotiation about something, the elephant or the rocks, or some third thing that had already taken on the urgent importance that only children can grant to objects. Claire caught his eye. The corner of her mouth turned up. Outside, April was doing its slow, deliberate work. Inside, burnt eggs, 2 coffees, children making rules for a game that didn't exist yet, and 89 small painted stones on a windowsill keeping track of the good days. 90 soon, 1 for each week that had been worth counting. Arne Mas Ender.